All right, guys, so today I'm going to talk about the question of to BEM or not to BEM. It shouldn't even be a question. It is a naming convention. It is not a requirement. It's not associated with any plugin or any particular person. It is a way that you name your classes that makes it make sense. It's broadly accepted, broadly used. So if you're not using BEM for your class naming, in my view, you should be. There are other naming conventions that may make sense to you, but the reality is that this seems to be the most broadly commonly accepted. So if you want other people to be able to read your code, if you want to employ people and you want them to understand how does your CSS class naming work, BEM just makes sense. So it is not something that is scary. It's not something that is hard or difficult to learn. In fact, if you believe that BEM is too hard, then maybe web development is not for you, because it is that simple, it makes sense, and you should just be using it. My view, you may differ in your view, but that's okay. We can agree to disagree on that. So what is BEM? So I'm going to put a link to this. So it's getbem.com. There's lots of different resources for this. And this talks about BEM being a methodology that helps you create reusable components and code sharing in a front-end development. Now that sounds really complicated, right? Poor choice of words, I believe. It's a simple naming convention. If we look at the actual naming, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. So when we look at what they call a block, so the B in BEM, it is basically a name. So it could be a card, it could be a service grid, it could be whatever you want, a testimonial. The block or the top level of that is basically lowercase, and the only thing that you have is you don't have any underscores. The only thing that you have is dashes to replace words. So if it was a service card, it would be service dash card, all lowercase. Quite simple, right? So that's the block of BEM. Okay, and then when you have elements, so on your service card, you might have a header. So this would say service dash card, two underscores, header. So the element is separated by two underscores. Very simple, right? So a card, for example, up here is your block. A card underscore underscore header is your header, right? And the only other thing that we have in BEM is the modifiers, which is the two dashes. So if we're going to modify our block, let's say, for example, we have a compact card. So you might have card dash dash compact, saying the compact is a modifier for my standard card. Or you might just, on the header, you might have header large. So you'd have card underscore underscore header dash dash large. So your header's large. It's quite an obvious way of naming things. Again, it just makes sense. So I can come back to my CSS classes and I can easily identify what they are and what they relate to. Previous to that, you were trying to make up names. So you're creating all these elements for your layouts and your components, and you're trying to think, now, what am I going to call this and how am I going to name this? And that changes over time. And then, you go back to it in 6 months' time and you look at it and you go, oh, this doesn't make sense, because you just did it on the fly. You didn't use a convention like BEM. I'm not saying you have to use BEM. You could use a different convention, but use a convention and always use the same one. BEM makes sense because it's so broadly accepted. Okay, so enough of that. I'm going to show you what it actually means in a builder. So I'm starting with a bricks builder with nothing else, no plugins, nothing else, to show you that BEM has nothing to do with bricks. It has nothing to do with any plugins. It is just the way you name your classes. So I'm going to start by adding a section, and inside my section, I'm going to add what bricks call a block element. Now, this is not a BEM block. This is just a block element. This could be anything. In fact, what I might do is I might add a div, make it easier so it's less confusing for you. Okay, so I'm going to add a div. I'm going to make that my block. I'm going to call that my card. Okay, and that's my card at the top there. And underneath that card, I'm going to add a block. I'm going to call that my header. And I'm going to duplicate that block twice. I'm going to call that my body. And I'm going to call that my footer. Okay, inside my header, I'm going to add a heading and just leave it that name. Inside my body, I'm just going to add a text element. So I've got like basic text, but I'm going to name this as body text. So when you have a basic name like text or icon or something like that, prefix it with something that makes sense, because you might have more than one text element and more than one icon on this. So I'm going to my footer, I'm going to add a button. I'm going to call that my CTA button. Okay, so now I've got a dilemma, because I'm looking at this and going, okay, how am I going to name these classes? Maybe I'll call that first one card. All right, so there's my first name is a card. What am I going to call this? Okay, do I call this card header? Do I call it a, main header? Do I call it my, fancy header? What am I going to name it? BEM solves the problem by, we just grab the block level. So this is our block level. So the B, we go to our element, which is an element underneath the block, and we put that there, and we do 2 underscores. So now that is a header, which is an element from our block, which is the card. Okay, so there we go. So we've got a card underscore header. And then what do we got? We got heading. So card underscore heading. Okay, oops, it's typo there. I'm going to fix that up. Okay, then we've got a body, card underscore body. All right, and we've got a body text. So we do card underscore body dash text. So our words are separated by a dash. So the element separator is our 2 underscores. Everything else is lowercase separated by a dash. Okay. Then we've got our footer underscore footer. Sorry, typing is terrible most days, and it's worse today. All right, which is where I need the productivity tools like ACS and AT, which I'm not using right now, just to show you don't need them. Underscore CTA button. Okay, so there is our BEM naming. It's not anything complicated. It's not related to any plugin. It is just the way you name your classes. Now I can come back to this and I can look at any time and I can go, okay, so I know that that's my block. In fact, I might even just put in brackets up here. That is my block, my B, and I'll put in here just so you can see what I'm talking about. That is an element. Okay. Element. Okay, that is it. Now, let's say we want to create a big card or a compact card. What I do is on my top level here, I add another class, which is my card dash compact. Okay, and I use that to style up my card. So on this element here, I've got my card and I've got my card compact. Okay, so both of those are on there. So my card gives me my initial styling and my compact gives me my compact styling. That is a modifier. On the header, if we want a modifier on the header, we would just copy that name. I would create another class name and I'll call that dash large. Okay, and then I would put my large styling on that modifier so it modifies our header to be large. So we've got a B, and that is the card. We've got a M, which is the card compact, so that's the M in the BEM. We've got a E, which is our card header, and we've got another M, which is our card header dash large. So that's BEM. Simple as that. Okay, now that is pretty much it. Now, I'm not going to do any styling here, but it's really just to show the concept of what BEM is and how you use it. And it just makes sense, all right? I'm going to show you one other thing here while I'm doing this. So I'm going to add another section, and in that section, I'm going to add a block. And in that block, I'm going to add, what am I going to add? I'm going to add a heading. And I'm going to add a text box or basic text. And I'm going to add 2 of those. So I'm going to add another basic text. So here I'm going to call that my section heading. Okay, and okay, I'm just going to call the section header. Actually, I don't need the section heading under there. Let's say section header heading. I'm going to call this our accent, and we're going to call this our lead. All right, so what we do here is on our section header, this is a block, we're going to call that section header. So section header. So a single dash because it is a block, it is not an element. Okay, and I'm going to copy that name or before I save it. So that's our section header. Okay, our heading, section header, underscore heading. Our accent, section header, underscore accent. Our lead, section header, underscore lead. Okay, now let's style this up. So on our heading, let's say on our section header, we're going to make sure our class is selected. We're going to align everything to the center. Okay, on our heading, we're going to make sure heading selected. Now style, typography, I'm going to set our font size to, I don't know, 3 rem. Nice and big, maybe 4 rem. So we can really see it. 4 rem, make it all uppercase, and we're going to center that so that when we go on a mobile, it's centered. Okay. Same as on our accent, we're going to make sure accent's selected. We're going to just center that. We'll make it all uppercase, and maybe we'll put a line height of 1, and we'll put a letter spacing of 3. So we've got spacing, typical accent type stuff, right? Look at our lead, and we just make that a centered. Did I center this other one? I can't remember. Yes, I did. We just make that centered. In our typography, maybe we'll make our color a little bit dim, maybe more dim. So that's a lead. Okay, so we've got our styling kind of done. Section header. Now what we're going to do is on that in our layout, let's put a, sorry, not our layout, our content. Let's put a row gap of 1 rem. Okay, I'm using pure bricks, pure values, not using any frameworks here, just to keep it really simple for you guys. I can see some spacing issues here, so I'm going to get my heading, on my heading, section heading, style, typography. I'm going to set my line height to 1, so that gets rid of the extra line height on there, and that all looks good now, right? Okay, now we want our accent, say accent heading, and we want to go to the rule, we've got a style, our layout. I'm going to set our, where's our order, looking for order. So used to utilities that it makes it hard to find things here. So where's that order? Can't find it. There we go. Flex grow, flex basis, contents. Can't even find it. Here's our order. Order. Should be on layouts. There we go. Order there. So we're going to set the order to -1. So it puts our heading above our accent above our heading. All right. Now we've got some really simple naming now. We've got a section header. We know that's our section header. We've got a section header heading, accent, blah, blah, blah. Now, this is using the bricks class system. So all of the settings we set in the UI are applied to that class. Let's have a look what that means. Okay, so if we have a look at the accent here, see this here? That is the BEM name that we gave the class, and here's all the settings from the bricks UI. All right, so it's really easy to identify. If I'm looking at my DOM and I'm looking at, okay, this is my section header's heading, that's the accent, that's the lead. These are all related to that section header because of the naming. All right, the naming just makes sense. All right, now let's go to another super cool feature of this. Let's say we're going to do some CSS level styling on this, which is something you might have to do if you want something dynamic or you want something that is not available in the bricks UI. We would go to our style, CSS. So we're on the block. So on the section header. Now, you know the root. So if we do the root, what that refers to in bricks is whatever you've got selected up here. So whether it's the ID or a class. So we're selecting the section header. Okay. So what we're going to do here is we're going to, on the root, we're going to target our heading. So we've named this heading. The BEM name for that is __ heading. So we can use root __ heading. We don't have to stop and think, okay, what class name did we stick on that? Because we know what it is, because it's something that we always use in the same way. So we're going to change the heading to be color of blue. Okay, there's our color of our heading changed to blue. What if we want to change the accent? Okay, let's say we could change the accent. So we're going to do root __ what will we put here? I don't know. Accent. Yeah, that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Because we know what our BEM naming is. All right, so root accent. Let's make the font size bigger. Font size. Maybe we'll make that 2 rem. Okay, we just made the accent heading bigger, and let's make it color green. All right, so we just made a green accent heading that is a font size of 2 rem, because we know that our root, which is our section header, 2 underscores, and then the element name is going to target that CSS rule. Let's save that. Have a look on the front end. Let's have a look here. So we get our bricks UI settings under this accent header. We've got our custom CSS, which was root __ accent. All right, we've got our heading here, which has got the bricks UI styles here, and then it's got our one, which is the root __ heading, and we set the color to blue. So that is the beauty of using a naming convention. I don't care if it's BEM or not BEM. BEM makes sense. It is a simple naming convention that is broadly used. If you're not using BEM, then you're doing yourself a disservice. It is not hard. It is something that you should be using, I believe, in bricks. So yeah, just start using it, and you won't regret it. Thank me later. Thanks, guys.